Okay, over to you.
Okay, so thank you, Kate, and for inviting us to come along this evening, and thanks everybody for showing up, and also those who are going to watch the recording. So myself and my colleague Hughes, we are from an organisation called Death's Door, which is a community space to help open up conversations around grief, loss, death and dying, and to help empower people make decisions, you know, at those times. And we're both currently training with Pushing Up the Daisies on the Last Breath course, which we are really enjoying and getting a lot from. So thank you, Kate, and everyone involved in the network for what you're doing. It's just so profoundly important. And yeah, so tonight we're going to talk maybe for 30-40 minutes or so. We'll see how we get on, but we're going to talk, share with you flower essences and some of what we've learned about flower essences and how they can help at this time, especially around the time of the last breath. So first of all, we're going to start off with a little description about what are flower essences, and basically what they are is they're the liquid. They're all liquids, and they are the imprint. The liquids contain the imprint of energetic features, including flowers, which we mostly know, but also crystals, trees, and other energies. Basically, the whole planet is vibrating. Everything's energy. Everything is moving at an energetic rate, and it's these energy frequencies that are captured in water. And as they're captured in water, it's the water that we take which helps inform our energy system. So it comes under the banner of vibrational medicine or energy medicine. What's really interesting about them is that as they contain these frequencies and these vibrations, they help us inform our vibration and our frequency and help us to come into harmony. Okay, they act like a little bit like a tuning fork. You know, if there's a disharmonious note, if you take an essence, it can help you come back into harmony. I'm going to show you a little bit where they're often, like the most obvious ones are flowers, and how they're made is simply taking flowers and placing them in a bowl of water, and the mixture of flowers, the energy of the flowers goes into the water, and the action of sunlight is what creates the essence. Okay, so that essence is then preserved, normally alcohol or like vodka or brandy, and it's that we then take in this form, a tincture form. Actually, tincture is not quite the right word. Tincture is what a herbalist would use. We call them essences, so they are flower or vibrational essences. Now, a really important distinction before we move into them is they are not essential oils, because that's something we get asked over and over again. Very, very different to essential oils. Essential oils are also amazing, and I'm an aromatherapist as well, and you know, they are phenomenal to use to help support our well-being. But essential oils work very physically on the body. They work with our physical anatomy, like, you know, with our joints, our sinews, our skin, our organs, because they are made of the physical part of the plant. The flower essences are made with the non-physical part of the plant, the spiritual, if you like, or the soul part. So, and that's the level that they work on with us. Okay, so they don't work with our physical being. They work with our emotional being, our mental being, and our spiritual being. And that's the sort of realm that they inhabit. Yeah, so there's a very famous flower remedy most people have come across, which is Dr. Batch's Rescue Remedy. And I see that that's in the kit at the moment, at the end of life kit as well, which is really good, because what Rescue Remedy is used for, it's used for shock, panic, you know, those crisis moments when you just feel you really cannot cope. And what it does, it helps us to stabilize our energy system so that we can actually cope with the intense emotions that we are experiencing. And what we'd like to do this evening is to take you through a series of common emotional states that can happen around the last breath, and also some of the common flower essences that you could explore to support yourself at that time. We're going to be mentioning many essences from the batch range, because that's a very easy to get hold of range. It's very well known, it's very well digested. It's, you know, it's a very common and very straightforward range to get hold of. We work with a producer who's got a company called Healing Herbs, and we tend to go to that batch range, but there are other batch ranges available. We're also going to be talking to you about ranges, some essences from the Australian bushflower essences, because they are also a very powerful range. And then there's also the Alaskan essences and indigo essences, and also other ranges, including my range, which are Earth Song essences, and Fee's range, which are Gaia's blessing. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll have a bit more of an idea about how you could be using flower essences at this time. We'll also, as well as the different emotional states we're going to talk about, and we're also going to mention how practically you can use the essences, you know, at that time. There's more than one way of using them, and it's just to give you some ideas and some inspiration about how you could start to use them, or if you're already using them, other ways of using them perhaps more completely, or in ways maybe you haven't thought of. Okay, so the first sort of emotional state that we're going to mention is the emotional state of shock. I mean, because that is obviously, even if we're expecting that loved one to go, and we've been expecting that for a very long time, sometimes, you know, the actual moment can leave us feeling, or other loved ones around us. Even if we're not feeling shock, it could be others around us that perhaps haven't been quite so closely involved are feeling shock. So, so our main remedy essences that we go to help us through that phase is the rescue remedy, as already mentioned. And within rescue remedy, there's one essence in particular, which is called Star of Bethlehem, which is this beautiful little white flower, and it's literally the star of the show. It just keeps you really centered, and it acts like a comfort blanket. Apologies if you heard that coming through, but anyway, it acts like a comfort blanket to help you in that sort of shock state. There's another essence combination that you can also look to, which is called soul support. And soul support is a really beautiful essence from Alaska. And it also contains, as well as flowers, it contains gem essences. And the gem essences are really grounding. They help us to stay really centered and really anchored, you know, into our being. So rescue remedy, soul support. From the bush range, there's an essence called emergency essence. And Fee's going to talk a little bit about one of those essences that's in that range in particular, that has a very anchoring feeling. You know, it helps us feel really anchored and really centered as we, you know, go through our process and our experience. And the last one I want to mention in the shock range is called deep strength. And that's one from my own range, and it contains essence, a special essence called red poppy, which is really grounding. You know, the essence of poppy is, when you think about poppies, they are so comforting and so have this effect of giving us feelings of profound security. So so that's some of the essences that you can think about, you know, maybe getting in advance or having you know, with you in your kit for shock. The next emotion that we're going to look at is the emotion of grief. Now, interestingly, grief itself is, I mean, it's a very multi-layered emotion because there are so many aspects to grief. So what we have kind of worked with is a combination called grief support, which is actually a combination of some of my range and some of Fee's range as well. And it's beautiful. It's actually come about as a blending because there wasn't a simple grief support remedy available. So, and what this essence contains, it contains red poppy, as I mentioned just now, which is very calming for profound security and helps you connect back to the essence of who you are. If you've kind of been flung out of your center and everything's feeling very chaotic. So it just gives you that real feeling of peace. And, you know, we do identify poppies with peace. So the actual essence, the flower essence of poppy, gives us feelings of real peace and it also contains jade, and jade acts as like to bring a lovely feeling of simplicity into the heart, because, you know, at this time things can feel complicated if we let them. You know, the actual process is very simple. The process of someone, you know, taking their last breath is simple, but there can be that human tendency around that process for things to be a bit chaotic. So jade just brings this beautiful simplicity and helps you come into your heart, so that you can just be in your heart as you go through this. And the other essence from my own range, the Earth Song range, is called Ashurst Henge. And years ago, I used to be an archaeologist, which was a really interesting career, and actually great foundation for the work I do now. And this essence was made at a site which is in the New Forest, quite close to where I live. And it's interesting because when it was being made, it was the message that was coming through was every end is the seed of a new beginning. You know, that message of, you know, every end is the seed of a new beginning. And I was told at the time it's for connecting with nature, the rhythms and cycles of nature. It wasn't until I was actually preparing my soulmate's funeral that I realized that this essence was actually for my mental state of grief, where I was very stuck mentally, that I found it hard to accept what was actually happening. So, and when we think about it, when we do connect with that rhythm and cycle of nature, you know, we accept grief as part of life. You know, we accept loss as part of love. We accept that process. We can just align with that rhythm. And when we're aligned with that rhythm, we don't feel the pain as much. You know, we obviously feel the loss, but we don't feel the pain that can come with the loss of not understanding. You know, there's a beautiful depth of understanding that comes with aligning with nature. So those are three essences in there. And Fee's going to talk now about the three from the Gaia's Blessing, your range that have gone in there. So,
okay, hello. I've never done anything like this before, so I have a script to read. So bear with me. The first one of my essences in the grief blend is co-created with the most ancient hawthorn tree I've ever met in Savernake Forest near where I live. And it's absolutely hundreds of years old. And so this is to connect us with ancient heart wisdom. So it taps us into Gaia, you know, our mother, our source. It connects us with our ancestors, and it connects us with the knowledge that even though our loved one has died, they live on in our hearts and our memories, and that death is not the end. And it helps us to choose to step away from old patterns of being and doing, and releasing the constraints of past fears and experiences that are replaying. The next one is Heart Rescue, and it's a combination between two gems, rose quartz and sugilite, and two flowers, Serato and Borage. And combining, they assist us with feeling safe and held in our hearts, to gain clarity and wisdom in our communication, and with knowing what we need and what is best for us in our time of sorrow, because it's easy to get distracted and pulled all over the place, but we need to be sort of anchored in our hearts and know where we are and what we need. And the last one in that blend is Winter Hawthorn, co-created with the same hawthorn tree. And it's a cyclical one, and it is helping us know that death is as important as birth and life. It helps us connect with the cyclical nature of being, aligning with the seasons and with nature. And it can assist us with being in our dark places, but also knowing that at some point in the future, spring will start to return.
lovely, thank you, Fee. Yeah, and I'm always struck by that, but when we put the combination together for both of us, there was an essence which was about that cycle of nature, that sort of, you know, every end is a seed of new beginning. It was, you know, that's just at the heart of it, really, isn't it? Is aligning with that, you know, natural rhythm. So the next emotional state, if you like, that essence is going to be really helpful for is the state of anger, you know, when anger comes. And, you know, that can be, you know, for any part of that process, or it could even be anger towards oneself, you know. So anger is a very healthy emotion. It's definitely got its place, but it can also be quite destructive. So if it's not channeled and if it's not harmonized, and that's the beautiful thing about flower essences, they always want us to come into harmony. You know, there's recognizing that all emotional states are valid, but if we get stuck in them, then we can come out of harmony. So the two essences that particularly help with this particular state of anger are this beautiful flower from Alaska, and it's blue alpha viola, tiny little flower with a great big voice, and it kind of helps us to get the anger out, you know, because it's about that power. I mean, anger is love as well, that isn't able to be, you know, expressed. So the blue alpha viola, it stops us from sitting on that anger, but helps us just to allow it out in a safe, harmonious and smooth way, you know, because that's what we're really looking to do, is to kind of be as emotionally intelligent and literate and emotionally fluid as we can be, you know, and give our emotions their voice that they need, you know, and give them their space that they need. So that essence can really help with that. And then another one that's really beautiful to help is very different. It's called chill. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's like for when you just really want to chill, you know, it doesn't matter what, because the body just recognizes the vibration of anger as anger. It doesn't care where it's come from. It doesn't care if it's so and so over there said that or not said that, or I didn't do this and I'm angry at myself. The body doesn't mind. The body just knows that feeling. So chill, it just helps to really just dissolve that feeling, and just to helps us to just kind of realign again. So okay, so that's our beginning. So over to Fee for talking about a few more different emotional states and how essences can help.
So despair, we can just be thrown into despair at any moment after someone's died. So I've got 2 sweet chestnut from the batch range. It's for the hopeless despair of those who have reached the limit of their endurance. It can also be called the dark night of the soul. And this essence allows us to surrender, but absolutely trust that we're being held and that there is a way out. It's a very powerful essence. And then one from my range, Imbolc, which was co-created at the Festival of Imbolc, sacred to the goddess Bridget. And it brings stability and surety that the light will return, brings us hope and pulls us out of despair when all seems darkness and bleak. The flame of Bridget kindles the spark in our hearts to help us find our way back to balance. From there, we went to guilt and have 2 essences for guilt. The first one is called Absolution, and it's one of my range. It's a very gentle one, and it's really good for children. When children under the age of 7 are aware of negative emotions expressed by their peers or those around them, they can very often feel that they're responsible, and that can be stored in the body and come out in later life as guilt as adults. And so this helps us to gently release, either as a child or as our inner child, to release that feeling that we're responsible and let it go. And then Pine is a batch essence. People feeling pine apologize all the time. They just say, I'm sorry for existing. They feel responsible for absolutely everything. And Pine helps them to release the burden that they've been carrying. It's like putting down a heavy weight off their shoulders, and helps them to find love, self-love again. And then the third one in this group is for overwhelm, and it's elm essence with the batch essences. And people who need elm are often the capable ones in the group. They may be the ones who hold the space and the energy for others. But when a loved one dies, the amount of things to do and the people to help out and all the emotions around can be overwhelming. So elm grounds us really deeply into the earth. It roots us into the earth and connects us with a vital wellspring of energy. It brings us back into our centre, strongly grounded and rooted. And now it's back to Sharon.
Thank you, Bea. Yeah, so the next one that we wanted to sort of share with you was the, you know, that state of having like persistent unwanted thoughts, you know, the mind chatter, you know, if you can't switch the mind off, like if your thoughts are running around like a hamster in a cage, you know, that one. There's an amazing essence for that, and it's the batch flowers. It's called white chestnut, and it's a really super essence for helping to come out of that state of, why didn't I do that? What if that? What I've got to do this, especially, you know, if you're, you know, yeah, in that state where just those thoughts are running around. It really helps to just calm down the mind chatter so that you can come back into yourself, into your heart, and operate from that place rather than from a busy mind, which is actually not achieving anything. So yeah, white chestnut's a beautiful one for that. And then we were looking at that fear state, you know, just being in fear, you know, and obviously fear is a massive, I mean, that's a whole workshop on its own, you know, just of what essences we could use and how we can help ourselves through different fear states. But there are some key essences that can just help in the moment. And that's what we really want, is just to have things on hand that can help us in the moment. And there's a very wonderful batch essence called Mimulus. And Mimulus is for that state of fear that, you know, there's a known state of fear. It's like, you know, that you're frightened of something, like, you know, mice or something, or something you're frightened of, you know, and you can identify what that is. And that state can get a bit out of control. So Mimulus helps us with that state of when we know what it is we're afraid of. And then there's another essence from the batch range called Aspen, from the tree aspen. And aspen is when we don't know what we're afraid of. We've just got this really sense of dread, and we just don't know what we're scared of, but we just feel it. We can't identify it. So aspen is beautiful to take at that moment, you know, of that unknown fear. I don't feel right, but I don't know what it is, that sort of state of being. So those are really, really great ones to go to. And then there's one from my range, which is mushroom, which is actually from the, what's it called? It's the umbrella mushroom. So it's an edible mushroom. And the mushroom essence, it absorbs fear. When you think about mushrooms, they do absorb a lot. And this essence absorbs fear, especially the subconscious fear, you know, the long, deep, ancient fear that we can't name it, but it's been there. And maybe it's an ancestral fear that's been handed down. But the mushroom, because it's a very ancient plant, often the ancient plants help us on a very ancient level. It just helps to absorb that fear. And people can find that these essences can help them with their sleep. We're in our essence world, we don't talk about physical things. We don't say essences, you can take an essence to help you sleep. But if fear is keeping you from stopping sleeping, or if your repetitive thoughts are stopping you from sleeping, then you can certainly look to try essences, either yourself or a loved one that's going through something, you know, to help them at that time. And then another kind of common sort of emotion that can come up around this time as well is that feeling of intolerance, you know, that just finding it really hard to be tolerant to other people, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, I mean, I've been in that situation myself, with relatives at end of life, and it can just be, you just can't tolerate, you know, what the situation is and what's happening. But you all have to get along, you know. There's a situation that everyone needs to kind of work together in. So intolerance is helped by the flower essence of beech. The batch flower essence of beech comes in, and it just gives us that sort of sense of, okay, well, I can see a bigger picture here now. I can get over my whatever that is, and I can just work with everyone now, rather than, you know, or if you in the presence of someone who is very intolerant towards you, that's another aspect, because flower essences, where they're vibrational medicine, they work with that vibration. So if you're in the presence of someone who's intolerant, you can take that essence for yourself, and it just kind of helps the dynamic. It's very interesting when you work at that level. Okay, so back to Fee for some more.
Okay, covering lack of confidence, there's two similar essences. There's larch from the batch range, which can manifest in feeling unable to voice our needs or opinions, unable to speak our truth. Larch people are completely unable to see their potential and can appear hesitant and passive. feeling useless and impotent. So Larch helps us to find our own uniqueness and to be able to express that to the world, bringing us out of what can feel like stagnation and release our creative potential. And a member of the Larch family, Tamarack, it's one of the Alaskan ranges. For people who lack awareness of their true capacity and have a weak sense of identity, they can find it very easy to get swayed by others and lose sight of who they are or what they want, have no confidence in their own unique skills and potentials, finding it easier to give their power away to those with louder voices. So that really helps you to find your voice and trust that you do know what you want and give you the confidence to speak it. Then hopelessness is Waratah, which is one of the Australian bushflower essences and part of the emergency essence that Sharon mentioned. This is a very strong essence. People maybe only need to use it for 4 or 5 days at a time. It's for those going through the dark night of the soul. And it gives us the strength and the courage to cope with crisis and brings our survival skills to the fore. But these aren't the limbic brain survival skills. These are skills that bring groundedness and certainty and clarity of emotions and thought, and help us feel connected to other realms according to our beliefs as well. It's a very powerful essence. And then jealousy, I've chosen Holly from the batch range. And jealousy can erupt when maybe you're feeling not quite involved enough, or feeling that more people are getting attention or more focus, or you're just feeling on the edge, or maybe you've cared for the person for 20 years and now you're, taking a back seat, and it feels like a really ugly emotion. But once you recognize it and express it and start to work with it, it's really powerful. So Holly brings us back to our heart center and helps us to find self-love. And it highlights what we dearly need in ourselves, which is self-love. And now it's back to Sharon.
So and as we're going through these, hopefully, I'm sure you can identify with some of the emotional states that we're talking about. So you keep a note for yourself as well of, any that you yourself have been in, at any time when you've been with a loved one, and perhaps you've been in that state where, you were the carer for that person for a long time, and then suddenly someone else comes in, maybe a distant relative, and it can lead to quite quite painful inner dynamic. So that's the level that these essences help us on, is they help to dissolve these emotions that can build up within us. So a few other ones that Fee and I discussed as can come up a lot are oversensitivity. If you're feeling oversensitive, and both of us are very sensitive people, and I'm sure lots of us here are really sensitive as well. If we're working in this area, then we've obviously got a high level of sensitivity, and that can be a blessing. It can also be a bit of a curse. If you are heightened sensitivity and then you just get affected by other people's emotions, especially if they're processing a lot of their anger, intolerance, whatever, and you're there in the firing line, it can feel really painful. So a few essences that can help with that is yarrow. And yarrow essence is amazing. It acts like a little filter in the aura to protect, so that we just don't get bombarded with other people's negativity and criticism. Yarrow is amazing for that. It gives us a lovely strength, and it also helps to take out of the aura any sort of negativity that we may have picked up from people. Then there's also Guardian from the Alaskan range, and Guardian contains yarrow as well, but other essences to build it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's Guardian. It's just if you feel like you are just feeling really vulnerable, and that you've got to have that conversation with that person or be in the presence of that person, and maybe this old story between you, maybe this old family stuff that's never been resolved, and all of a sudden there you are, and you can feel very weak and powerless. So to have things in our tool bag that we can take, and this has really helped me as well at the death of my sister, and dealing with and also at the death of my brother as well. I found Guardian really helpful in situations that I was you know, dealing with family members where we weren't all seeing eye to eye. So, and it just gives you that it gives you that strength. And there's another one for oversensitivity, which is Stone Circle, which is from my range. And that was made at a Stone Circle in Cornwall. And that is specifically for the feminine energy system. It's like specifically, if you're in a feminine body, if you're in a female body, there's sometimes you need extra sort of protection around situations. So it just gives you that, you know, so Stone Circle, very grounding and very protective. So yeah, we also looked at, and that it kind of goes with this oversensitivity in a way, is the self-doubt. You know, self-doubt. If you're really not feeling, you're really doubting what you should be doing, like you're not trusting yourself to be making the right decision in the moment, or you're doubting what you've done, or you're getting, you know, perhaps some criticism from somebody, and you know that you need to stand up for yourself, but you need a little bit of extra strength to do that. Then Serato from the Batch range is amazing. It kind of helps us to know our hearts, you know our truth. And when we know our hearts and we know our truth, that's all we need, really. It's like the rest is just detail and information, but it brings us back to that space. So Serato is a really good one for that. And then Red Poppy, again, from the Earth Song range, Red Poppy for that grounded, you know, I know who I am. It gives you that feeling of, it connects us back to the essence of who we are, which is love, basically. So it helps us connect back to our true essence. So, and again, from that space, we don't doubt, you know, it's much easier. And then there's another one from my range as well, which is Grape Hyacinth. And that was beautiful little flowers that you get. And that one is for drowning out the collective noise, like other people's opinions, other people's thoughts, you know, all those opinions and all those thoughts, you know, that are sort of, we can get washed in and get taken over by. Essences like Grape Hyacinth are really good for that. And there's one specifically that's come about as a result of our training, a state of being that's come about of our training with Kate, and it's the quiet voice. And Kate talks about the quiet voice. And, you know, and there's an essence for that, actually. And it's an Alaskan combination, and it's called Beyond Words. It's called Beyond Words, and it's absolutely beautiful. And it's it helps us to find our voice, you know, and it helps us in that very loving way. In that, oh, I feel quite emotional. Yeah, in that very loving way, in that very, this is what is the right thing to do. It just helps us find that voice so that we can voice that in a very gentle, loving way. And it's beautiful. It's a combination of crystals and flowers, and it's it really helps to support the voice in those situations that might be challenging. And what's also really interesting to think about with flower essences, that a lot of, you won't read about this in books often, but you talk to practitioners, you'll hear this a lot, is that if you have an emotional state where that you say you were in a situation where you weren't able to voice what you really wanted to voice, you can work with Beyond Words to help you to kind of dissolve that emotion around it. Although that situation's gone, you may still be holding the feelings around that. You may still be holding some of the pain or the residual stress or trauma from that time. So essences, because they're vibrational, because they're energetic, they're not bound. They're very quantum. You know, they're very bound. They're not bound by, you know, time and space as other things can be. They can work backwards and they can work forwards, and they work outside of our, you know, perhaps our known or scientific, you know, sort of experience of the world as we see it or have been told to see it. So what I'm trying to say there is that the essence can help us to heal those times when we didn't have the courage to speak the words, and that can be very healing, you know. So lovely. Okay, and then it's back to Fee for a few more.
Okay, so the next one we've chosen is for change, because everything changes when a loved one takes their last breath. So when you face a major change in your life, you can easily slip back into old patterns, even though you may have made striding steps into being a new you and finding new ways of working. As soon as that trauma happens, you can easily fall back into the old ways of being. So this helps you to steady yourself and keep aligned with your new path or your new way of being or thinking or doing. And it's a really good one for change. The next one is for...
Is that the walnut, Fee?
Yes.
That's walnut, sorry, I don't know if I heard it or not. Sorry.
The next one is for over concern for others. So people needing this essence feel anxiety for the well-being or safekeeping of someone they hold dear. So you may feel overly concerned for one of the grieving members of your family, or there may be someone else who's ill at the time, and the energy of your over concern can weigh really heavily on the person you're concerned about. So by taking red chestnut, it brings that energy back to you, so you're not affecting the person that you're worrying about. And it also starts to dissolve that energy within you so that you can have a really balanced relationship with them. And there may be concerns, but you're not weighed down and you're not weighing them down with the concerns at the same time. Sort of allows everyone to breathe freely again. For apathy, chosen wild rose. And this is for people who are often exhausted. They may have been caring for the person who's died for a long time. They may have been supporting others. They can be burnt out, with their concern for others. They're resigned to being in this state almost, having suffered much emotional, mental, and physical anguish, and they are beyond depleted. Deep feelings of sadness weigh heavily on their hearts, making it heavy, and they've lost all joy in life. So wild rose brings solace to our hearts again, returns our love for life, and brings renewed enthusiasm to move on. And then the last one in my group is for indecision. And I've chosen Ceranthus. And when you're faced with somebody taking their last breath, there are so many decisions that you feel you need to make. And the person in the Ceranthus state just can't. They can't choose. But they also won't ask anyone for help or advice. So this weighs really heavily upon them to come up with a decision. And Ceranthus helps bring them back into their centre and helps to balance them so that they can get in touch with their inner knowing and make the right decision. And that's it.
Thank you, Fee. So there's one more little section from myself before we look at how we can actually be using them in the days after someone's last breath. So one of the states that we wanted to also mention was that state of busyness. And that one that Kate talks about is that when people just need to get up and do things, you need to go and they just can't stay still. And obviously, there are those human things that we can guide people into doing, making cups of tea and making meals and, doing things. But if someone's really struggling with that and they just cannot be, literally they cannot be, and it's really causing them a lot of torment because they just can't be with the situation, then there's an essence from Alaska called polar ice. And polar ice is made as an environmental essence, which is something I didn't mention, but you can make essences from environmental places, like actually the stone circle essence was an environmental essence, and a lot of Fee's essences are environmental, and you can make essences from the solstice energy. You can make an essence from anything really. But so the polar ice essence, it gives us this feeling of just pure being with no expectation. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to run to. There's nowhere to run from. We're just in this space of pure being. And for some people who haven't been able to find that space, it can really help them find that space so that they can just feel more comfortable with the transition, with the process that they're in. And actually seeing that this essence comes up more and more for people, because as a collective, we're just told we've got to be doing all the time. So at the time of the last breath, as part of, on standby, for perhaps if someone is really struggling, to get to that space, then polar ice can be really, really helpful. Another state which we talked about, which can come up, is a feeling of resentment, specific feeling of resentment. Once again, this perhaps could be, it's either towards ourselves again for not acting in ways we could or should have done, or towards another person. Again, maybe a family member, there's a feud has happened, and something we just need to be more open-hearted. There's two particular essences that really help for that. One is mistletoe, which is from my range, the Earth Song range, and mistletoe helps to release grudges from the heart and bitterness and old wounds, so that we can just be very open-hearted and very loving. and it kind of dissolves a lot of that pain that can occur, especially within families, and it helps to improve connection. You know, and again, it's a very ancient plant, mistletoe, so it's really works on quite an ancient level. And then the next one there in that category is willow. And willow is a batch flower essence, and willow is for when you think about a willow tree, it just bends and it moves, you know, it doesn't sort of stay stuck and rigid. And if you're stuck and rigid, you could snap. Whereas if you just bend like the willow, then you know, it's very smooth. And it's interesting, isn't it? They have a lot of willow coffins, the bark, because it's very pliable, it's very soft, it's got very soft energy, it's got very giving energy. So the willow energy helps us just to release and just go with the flow. So those are really lovely essences to know of. Then the final two states of being that we wanted to talk about tonight were is the feeling of loneliness. You know, if this person, you know, when this person that you know, you've shared your life with, and they're gone, you know, and yes, they're gone in a form of them's gone, but their physical body is still, you know, it's gone, you know, they're not there anymore. So that feeling of loneliness can be really hard to reconcile, and that specific feeling of loneliness. And there's a beautiful, beautiful flower essence combination from Alaska. So you often get it in a spray form as well. It's called Calling All Angels. And Calling All Angels just does exactly what it says on the tin. You know, it kind of helps you to just receive that support, that angelic support, and feel that connection. And it's so soothing. It's just it's like a soothing blanket. Calling All Angels is a beautiful one just to spray into a room. I mean, any of these can be sprayed into a room, and Fee will talk a bit about that as well in a moment. But Calling All Angels is a lovely one to get to know. And they put rose oil in the spray as well, which is obviously really nice too. And then the last essence, the last state we wanted to talk about was interesting. It's actually the emotional state of regret. And it's very interesting because obviously the work we're doing and the work of pushing out the daisies is to take away that regret, because it's giving people that opportunity to just have that time. And because you only get one opportunity to do that, you know, when someone takes their last breath, that is their last breath. You can't go back and do it again. So the work of pushing out the daisies is so important to help eliminate regret. And I once had one of my spiritual teachers say, the only wound we never heal from is regret. And that makes sense, because we can heal from any other emotional wound, but regret is, you can't go back and do it again. You know, so we've got an essence that helps with regret. It helps with regret, and it's the essence of lichen. And it's one of the Earth Song range. It's one from my range. And lichen brings with it the energy of deep acceptance, you know, deep acceptance of what is, and allows us to let go at a really deep level of the things that we didn't think we could let go of. You know, it helps us to really let go and really just be in a state of deep acceptance. And in that state, then regret can't live there, because we've kind of we've arrived at deep acceptance. So those are the essences that we really wanted to share with you. And I hope it's not been too overwhelming. I know there's probably quite a lot there, but you don't have to remember them all. One, we've got a recording, that's good idea, Kate, to record it, so you can come back to this and watch it again. And also you can also reach out to us and ask if you want any more clarification, but we just wanted to give you a fairly complete picture. And now Fee's going to talk to you about how we can actually use the essences after someone's last breath. And I see we've got some questions, but we will answer them at the end. So keep popping in questions if you do have them.
Okay, so traditionally essences are taken as drops under the tongue. 3 or 5 drops under the tongue twice a day. But apart from that, there are many, many ways of using them. And it'd be really lovely to create a ritual around using them as well. During times of trauma, it's really important to drink water, drink lots of water, to keep flushing toxins out of your body and keep you hydrated. So adding essence to everyone's water bottles or to a jug. You can add it to any beverage, hot or cold, non-alcoholic or alcoholic. You can put it in the tea or coffee pot. Add it to absolutely anything. Put it in jellies. Another aspect is companion animals. They're really sensitive to people's emotions and they grieve like we do. So you can add essences to their water bowls, and it's really, really nice to consider their emotional well-being as well. When family and loved ones are gathered around someone after their last breath, emotions can get quite heightened, or there can be disagreements. A lovely thing to do is to get a really beautiful bowl that you dedicate to this for that moment. Wash it well, fill it with spring water, and then as a group, you take it in turns to, if you feel able to, express the emotion that you're struggling with. You don't have to, and then pick the essence that helps with that emotion. It's really good to include children. If they're not able to access what emotion it is, just give them the bottles and they'll choose what they need. They intuitively know what essences they need. They work really, really well with children and animals. And as the water evaporates, it fills the room and can bring about a real feeling of harmony and calm and peace in the room. Another way is to add a few drops of essences to lotions, creams, massage oils, and you could massage each other for relaxation, and you can also use them to massage into your dead loved one's body. You can add them to baths, to shower gel, to shampoo. You can add them to oil burners when you're burning essential oils, and those diffusers that you put on radiators, you can add them to those. And then a lovely thing to do is to add them to a bottle with a little spray top, and then mist the room, mist each other. You can mist inside the coffin. If they're going to be wearing a shroud, you can mist the shroud. And I have a beautiful story that Sharon told me about when her soulmate, Jake, died. When he was alive, she used to love to iron his shirts. And that was just something she loved doing. It wasn't a chore, it's what she wanted to do. And so after he died, she wanted to iron his shirt for the last time. And that was a huge thing and really difficult to think about doing. So she made a misting bottle with her red poppy essence in it and sprayed the shirt and ironed it. And the essence held her and helped her to do this last loving task for Jake. And then she dressed him in it. And so he was in his coffin with his lovingly ironed shirt infused with her poppy essence. And that made a beautiful connection for her on his final journey as well. And there's just as many ways as you can think of to use essences. And if you think of any others, let us know, because I'm sure we haven't covered them all. So that's it. And then it's back to Sharon.
Thank you, Fee. And I got through that without crying. So that's quite it's always good, isn't it? Or whatever it is. It's, you know, so but there was one other thing as well we spoke about, is that you could anoint the body as well with oils. You could add flower essences to your anointing oils if you wanted to wash the body as well. That would be very beautiful thing to do. Just choose something that you would like then, you know. So yeah, so that's it. So that's what we wanted to share. I hope you found it helpful. Please keep in touch as well. We'll let you know at the end. We've got a couple of events we want to like to talk to you about as well. Sorry about that. That keeps doing that. Well, actually, I'm going to mention it now, if that's all right, Kate, because we've got a little announcement. It's we've Fee and I have known each other for a long time, but we've only been working together on Death's Door for about a year, and it's so much has happened and so many lovely things have come about. And one of the things is that we're running a camp called Flowers from the Forest, the first weekend in July in Somerset, and it's honouring grief, and there'll be a lot of rituals, song, dance, sitting around the fire, lots of cackling, I expect, and crying. So, but anyway, if anyone feels called to join that, get in touch. We'll let you know more information. And the best way to get in touch with us is currently through our Facebook community, which is Death's Door. You can come and find us there, and we'll also be letting you know about future workshops and trainings there that we're going to be running, because you know there's a lot opening up. Yeah, there will be a website at some point, but one thing at a time. So, and that was it. So thank you. And there were some questions, wasn't there, Kate? So happy to answer those.
Yeah, thank you very much to both of you. That was amazing. What came to my mind was just something I remember saying about when there's a lot more, when somebody takes their last breath, there's so much more going on than somebody being dead. And it's just really just thinking of just so much emotion around. And yeah, it's fantastic to think of that way of supporting us all. So thank you for that. I'll just go through the questions here. There's a question from Heather was, can you bypass the alcohol and soak the flowers in water and just drink the water?
Yeah, that's what you could do. Yeah.
But
absolutely.
you would need to know how to make the...
You would, but I mean, Fee, have you got anything you want to say first? Or
You can also dilute them in vegetable glycerine or what's the apple cider vinegar. So that's other ways of it, because it's just a preservative. So
yeah, because the bottom line is, I mean, you could, like, at the moment, I've got all this sunshine, I'm making quite a few new essences, which is really lovely, but if I want them to last, I'll need to put them in a preservative. But if you're just going to use it straight away, absolutely, if you can do it straight away. Also be careful that you know that the flower isn't toxic. I don't want to be, anaraki about it, but you kind of sometimes just check that the flower isn't toxic if you're going to do that. So, because the thing about when we make a flower essence, they end up diluted down, and they are diluted down so much that there's so little of what was the flower and the water mixture in the bottle that it's almost like a homeopathic level. So if, for example, the flower was toxic, then by the time it gets into the bottle, it won't be, if that makes sense. So you've got to kind of have a little think around toxicity and stuff like that. But as saying that they are very safe compared with other things, they really are. But when we work to make blends for people, we can use cider vinegar or vegetable glycerin to dilute down. Hope that's answered the question. Heather,
okay, great. And Isabel's asked, what is the difference between a tincture and an essence?
Yeah, well, a tincture is something a herbalist would use. So it does have the physical component. It's got, so the herbalist will use physical plant material, whereas we will use the energy of the plant material. So I did use the word tincture, and I shouldn't have done. I get a bit, overexcited. But yeah, but an interesting aside to that. So you've got a tincture and essence. So the flower essence is also known as the flower remedy, but there's also an essential oil, which weirdly is not essential to the plant and is not an oil either. So that's really complicated sort of stuff over there. But so an essence is is the essence of a plant, but held in water and diluted down.
Right. Isabel also asks, if someone is experiencing a myriad of emotions, would they combine the essences together and take them all at once?
Do you want to answer that
one? You can make bottles up with quite a few different essences in, so you could do, yes, if you're very specific about what emotions you wanted to cover, you could add in essences for each emotion.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And as well as that, another aside to that is if there's a lot coming up at once, it can be good just to take like a rescue remedy or emergency or soul support, because sometimes if everything, it can get overwhelming. Sometimes it's good to just take a simple, like a rescue remedy for a while. Hope that helps as well. But yeah. Yeah.
And are the essences preventative or used as a reaction, as you would a painkiller if you had a headache? Or would you use them?
You can, as in to prevent
advance?
Something happen. Not so much.
Not
really. No, they're much more in the moment with the emotion that you're feeling, and we feel that's part of their power, is they help us with our emotional literacy. They help us to identify, oh, what am I feeling? Oh God, I'm feeling despair, or I'm feeling grief, or I'm feeling guilt. Rather than like the anger, I'm feeling anger, but the reason I'm angry is because I'm feeling guilty about something I've done, if that makes sense. So it kind of helps us to fine tune our emotional world. So they don't but saying that, they could prevent further things happening down the line. I'm thinking about mistletoe myself. If I carried holding on to my grudges and my resentment, I would end up feeling really unhappy in my later life. Whereas I want to clear my resentment. So, and it's sometimes these answers aren't always very straightforward.
I'm just getting my practical head on, and then thinking. So I guess it's a case of having, like, is there a few key ones to have, like I'm thinking of myself going out, you know, to, I mean, I've got a few oil blends, you know, essential oil blends that somebody made for us. Could it be the same with the essences? You know, is there, maybe have some, would it be mixes or?
Yeah, absolutely. Mixes, definitely.
I love the calling all angels.
Isn't it?
I just love, I mean, that's a no-brainer, isn't it?
That's a no-brainer. So so go to the ones that if you feel called to, so that would be good to have a calling all angels on hand, and that is a combination. Maybe a combination for emergency, a combination for despair, a combination for not being able to voice. You know, those.
And so am I picking up right that, I mean, or is this something you would take for a few days, or is it just in the moment, or?
Different ways of doing it. They can be taken in acute situations, just a few days, or if you're dealing with a longer issue, say long-standing lack of confidence over a longer period of time. But obviously we're looking at this window of the last breath, so it is an acute period. But you may also find that if you're dealing with, you know, the issues of feeling resentful or regret that you didn't do what you could have done, you know, you might want to keep taking that for a bit longer. So we often encourage people to do dowsing to find out what you need for you, as well as, you know, asking somebody.
Right.
But, you can do it either. You can, and that's often the thing that people do find difficult about flower essences, because they could be a bit more accommodating in their reach than things that we're used to having, you know, more prescriptive. They're very, what would you say? They're very flexible, aren't they? They're very.
Yeah, and also sometimes you might start taking an essence, and then you'll take it for a few days, and then you'll forget, and that's usually an indication that you don't need to take it, you know, anymore. So just I think trust your body and your intuition as well.
Yeah, and thanks.
Does anybody have it? Sorry, does anybody have any questions they'd like to say out loud, or ask anything to Sharon or Fee before we? I'm just seeing it's 8 o'clock.
Wow.
Okay, so what I think we'll do is we'll stop recording.